All right. Hello. Welcome. I'm Teresa Osapak, the director of the Minnesota Population Center and a faculty member in FECH. A few brief announcements today. Please join us this Friday, both in this room and on Zoom for the final workshop of the year. Come and give advice to those practicing their PAA presentations. And then next Monday, is our final seminar of the semester. Tamara Dubowitz from University of Pittsburgh School of Public Health is giving a talk on neighborhoods in Pittsburgh. Now I'm going to turn it over to Arthi Bhatt, Dr. Bhatt, who is a population health postdoc, to introduce our speaker.
Thanks, Teresa. I'm really excited to introduce Dr. Jade Jenkins, who is an associate professor at the University of California, Irvine School of Education. She studies early childhood development policy and does multidisciplinary work that focuses on policy intervention using a diverse array of research methods to evaluate programs, understanding mechanisms promoting child and family well-being. And Dr. Jenkins also serves as an associate dean of the undergraduate program in education sciences and is the co-director of the UCI Center for Population Inequality and Policy, as well as the associate editor for education evaluation and policy analysis. So thank you so much for being here, Dr. Jenkins, and we're really excited for your talk. Oh, and here is your mug that you can only receive by speaking at our seminar series.
Oh, this I will carry around at my office. Thank you so much. Okay, great. So I'm so excited to be here. We are an itty bitty baby new pop center at UCI. We are a pre-funded center. We were just came into existence in January 2025, so it's been a little different for us, but excited to be here and learn from the just tremendous institution that you all have built and the interdisciplinary group that you have. And so I'm really excited to talk about this work because I interact with a lot of early learning people, a lot of education people, and in the Pop Center, I love getting to hear from a lot of different people from different disciplinary perspectives. And so grateful to be able to talk with you all and get feedback today. I don't know that everybody here is as familiar with early childhood policy and early preschool, so I have a little bit more background to motivate what's going on here. But this work is from the RL1 that we house at UCI in collaboration with my colleagues at TC and Duke, my co-authors, all the standard stuff. And the different data sources we're partnering with here. So this is all my errors and our team, and don't blame anybody else as standard stuff, and grateful to all the people that have given us really great feedback. So the fundamental kind of scientific question here is, what does preschool mean for our population? What does preschool imply, the investments in public preschool imply for our population health and well-being, both for the children who receive those benefits and for the families as well. And so over the course of the past 60 years, public preschool has been viewed as one of the key drivers of educational and economic opportunity. For whatever reason, we decided that age 7 was the age of reason in the United States, and that is when public schooling commences. Science has caught up, and we now know that children are learning right away. So it is sort of arbitrary when we decide to publicly invest in children's education. And so a large, big changes in educational and child development policy over the past 50 years has been investments in public preschool, which preschool age is between ages 3 to 5 in the years prior to kindergarten. Before that, we think of it as an infant toddler to stage 0 to 3. So when I'm saying preschool, I mean this is synonymous with like age 4 pre-kindergarten education. And so how much has preschool increased over time? If you're familiar with the Head Start program, Head Start is the first early childhood educational policy in the United States, I would argue. It was created in the 1960s during the War on Poverty. They are direct grants from the federal government, the Department of Health and Human Services, that go to community organizations, school districts, nonprofits, and they fund high quality preschool and early care, infant care for economically disadvantaged families. The qualifying income level is at the federal poverty level or below, regardless of where you live. So it's really the most economically disadvantaged families and families facing substantial developmental children who face developmental challenges as well. So since the 60s and now, Head Start enrollment has increased substantially. The other key policy action has been at the state level, which is where child care subsidies, a block granted kind of welfare program that helps offset the cost of child care for low-income working families. And then states have funded their own preschool program, which is classroom-based early education for children primarily at age 4, but some states have opened this up for age 3. Minnesota, I think, has a pretty robust preschool program, so maybe you all are very familiar from your own children. But about a third to today, the latest information is about 37% of 4-year-olds in the United States participate in preschool. So this has been one of the most substantial scaled up educational policies over the past 50 years. And how did we get this much traction? How did this much growth occur in this one policy area? Well, we've built on what we termed is strong legacy evidence. And this comes from 2 extremely famous proof of concept RCTs that occurred in the 1960s and 70s. Who is familiar with Perry Preschool or Abecedarian? Okay, a couple of modest hands. I'm gonna try to not run into this. So these, let me tell you why you're gonna care a lot about these 283 children, maybe total. So these are 2 randomized control trials that occurred during these time periods, actively recruited African-American families and families whose mothers had very low education and very substantial intellectual differences in these 2 different parts of the country. They provided randomized offers of intensive early care and education, in addition to wraparound services, diapers, formula, family support services. ABC provided transportation. So really high intensity programs to really test if we do whatever it takes, this book we were talking about this morning, if we really do offer all the stuff in early childhood, what happens to kids? And then they were lucky enough that they followed them for a really long time. So these evaluations yielded amazing results. And the bunch of them are listed on this side of the table here. So some of them yield substantial cost savings to society as well. Is this the right thing? So reducing child incidence of injuries, reduce teenage motherhood, reducing grade repetition, reduce special education, improved high school graduation, college attendance, labor force participation, reduced welfare use, and reduced interaction with the criminal justice system. And if you do a cost-benefit analysis of these, the monetary benefits of all of these observed child outcomes were substantial. So if you scale that up, and these economists at Rand did this for both of these programs, really big cost savings to society. Exciting results from RCTs, fairly limited impeachability. I am gonna just kill myself on this. Okay, I'm so sorry, I walked too much. Thank you. Okay, so who's seen this graph before? The Heckman equation curve, anybody? Okay, so that's where the Heckman curve comes from. And so he's, kind of taking aggregating across RCTs from across the lifespan. And if you do this with the RCTs, primarily from the 1970s, so this is like job training stuff, this is investments in schooling. Heckman in the 2000 era kind of parted the seas for early childhood education in a lot of ways by saying, look at this return on investment. So this economicization of the returns of early intervention kind of broke through the floodgates and increased more and more investment, being able to appeal not just to the like puppies and cupcakes, children smiling and playing, but like, this is good, hard return science, right? So this really changed the game for preschool. This proof of concept was substantial in leading the way and showing that, children are learning, early childhood intervention is a good thing, and we can really make an impact on children that need these supports most. Oh, wait a minute. Oh, wait. Okay. Hold on. Okay. I'm going to go back a little more. I don't know what happened. So this is this strong legacy evidence, right? But now if we fast forward, it is no longer 1960 and 70s. We don't have segregated hospitals. We have SNAP. We have civil rights. We have expanded educational opportunities. The counterfactual, in short, has changed substantially. So what does it look like when we move from a demonstration program to scaled up population level preschool policy? What do we know there? Well, let me tell you a little bit about the average, what we're dealing with in preschool policy. And so, I mean, after this talk, you might be like, let's put the cover back on that pot of early childhood policy. I don't want to deal with your mess. So what do we have? Well, kind of what I was saying before. In this paper, Anna Whitaker, local Minnesotan, Minneapolite. Do you say Minneapolites? No. What do you call yourselves? Minneapolitans. A Minneapolitan herself leading this paper, really trying to explain why do we see these differences between demonstration programs and what we know now. If you look at this is a meta-analytic data set of early childhood RCTs. And if you aggregate them kind of to the olden times and modern times, we just see lower treatment impacts. So that treatment control difference, the bar is harder, right? Like it's good, we're serving more kids. Effect sizes are lower. That's fine. I think that's a pat on the back for social science and policy. But the average post-treatment impact of modern RCTs is a lot smaller. And then we see that those effects fade not long after the end of the intervention. So why is this the case? What's going on? But we know that right now in modern times, we can expect lower post-treatment impacts at least. So if we look at recent evidence on publicly funded scaled up preschool programs, and again, just focusing on RCTs, because there's a lot of confounds when we're thinking about quasi-experimental work and things like that, just focusing on the modern RCT evidence, what do we see? First, there's the Boston pre-K study. So Boston pre-K has been heralded as a model exemplar intervention. They do their public preschool. It's in the public schools. They have masters trained teachers and coaches. It's a unique model. But what one study by Gray-Loeb et al. This is in this is a group of economists that did this study. They looked at a lottery randomized design of the offer of Boston preschool at oversubscribed schools. So a lot of the modern evaluation lottery RCT studies are in these oversubscription sites, and we can talk about how that matters and why. But what did they find? Well, at the end of the Boston preschool, there were no wait a minute, sorry, shoot. Now I have to go back to my other slides. I don't know what happened when I emailed them to you, but I swear that was better. Okay, I'll come back to that in a minute. My apologies, I don't mean to confuse you more. All right, first, legacy evidence, compare that to the modern evidence. Legacy evidence suggests that these Perry and Abecedarian programs consistently improved achievement across both studies. IQ was persistent in Abecedarian, but not in Perry. We don't use that in studies anymore for clear reasons. Unclear socio-emotional or behavioral impacts. Abecedarian didn't measure them as well. And to the, I guess, shock and awe of the population and health researchers in here, they did not measure health at post-impact. So this is one of the things we're looking at in this grant is preschool impacts on health. And I could talk about the mechanisms there, and I could talk about a lot of things, and I have to keep moving. Okay. So we know that they impacted achievement. This is the legacy evidence. The proof of concept says we should see achievement impacts across childhood, right? In adulthood, we see achievement persisted, like things like attainment, going to college, graduating, years of education, reduction in crime. Again, not these health outcomes. But so we know from the legacy evidence, we should see these persistent impacts on achievement and graduation. Compare this with the modern corpus of evidence. So now I take us back to the Boston pre-K program, which found no impacts on achievement during K-12, using all of this beautiful administrative infrastructure that Massachusetts public school has. Another RCT by Chris Weiland and her team also found no impacts of the randomized offer of Boston preschool So no post-treatment. But this Gray-Loeb et al. Study did find pretty persistent, robust impacts on behavioral problems in adolescents, improved high school test taking and taking the SAT and ACT, more likely to graduate high school, and higher likelihood of enrolling in post-secondary. So comparing with the legacy evidence, that proof of concept's a little fuzzy, but at least there's some of these achievement impacts that pick up later, even if they didn't show up in post-treatment. Okay, modern context, let's see, what else do we have? The other really important piece of evidence is the Head Start Impact Study. And maybe some of you have heard of the Head Start Impact Study. This was commissioned by Congress in 2001 or 2002. It was a national RCT that was representative of Head Start grantees across the country. It included 83 different grantees. So a grantee is like they get the Head Start money and then they can have many centers. So this occurred across the country, diverse, representative of Head Start across the country at centers, at grantees that were oversubscribed. So they had more people that wanted Head Start than they had slots. What did they find in the Head Start Impact Study? Substantial language and literacy impacts at the end of the Head Start year. Great, that's the proof of concept that we think about. Like you focus on language and literacy in the preschool year, at the end of the year on researcher validated measures, you see that. Great, wonderful. Nothing on math, nothing on socio-emotional skills, which is a big feature of Head Start. And then to the disappointment of like every single person on earth, these effects faded by, most of them by first grade, and then in the third grade follow-up, they were completely gone. Some persistence for subgroups like dual language learners. Looks like there were some persistent effects there, but so we see fade out, lower treatment, post-treatment impacts, inconsistent post-treatment effects, and fade out of effects. That's the modern early childhood landscape. Now, the thing that has thrown a wrench in the early childhood policy landscape is the Tennessee pre-K evaluation. What did this do? And I promise I'm going to get to my own research, but I just want to bring you along for what a hot mess we are under the hood in early childhood. Randomized trial of Tennessee pre-K, targeted program just for low-income children in the public schools, occurred at oversubscribed centers. They found positive post-treatment impacts, really strong, in the 0.2 to 0.5 range on math and literacy. At third grade, when they followed these kids in the administrative data, things were trending negative. Meaning if you took the random offer of getting Tennessee pre-K, you were doing worse in third grade. At sixth grade, those became statistically significant, and there were significantly higher school offenses. So we have an example of a harmful preschool program. So the preschool literature is really busting at the seams. And despite positive short-term impacts, we see really mixed long-run impacts. And so there's mixed, even within a state, you could see different things from an RCT versus an RD, and some subgroups benefiting, but not others. So when we wrote this grant, we really we described the preschool literature as bursting at the seams, that in one instance, in one location it works, in another instance it doesn't. What do? How can we zoom out and get a 30,000-foot view on whether or not this large-scale public investment in preschool has made a difference at the population level? One of the biggest innovations in education and child policy over time. And so what we're doing in this study and in all of the grants, in all of the papers within the R01 is taking this right-hand side variable of per pupil funding. So per child in the state population, per 4-year-old in the state population. As states have invested over a 20-year period, what has that yielded at the population level in terms of education of children, in terms of maternal employment and maternal economic self-sufficiency, child health, and a number of outcomes. Today, I'm just talking about achievement, and I promise that's where I am going. Okay, and we're relating this to a robust literature in K-12 education that economists have been arguing about for a really long time. Does money matter? Does money matter? And we're trying to kind of bring the early childhood investments into this K-12 conversation, but also just as a sanity check, has preschool done the thing we've thought it would do, which is equalize our educational opportunity? So basic research question is, are these investments associated with population level achievement? I'm going to show you a state fixed effect, and we're using cross-state variation over a 20-year period. It's a very simple model. So I would say we're considering these associations or a upper bound of a causal effect. That's what we think we're identifying here. Second research question is whether this has advanced the opportunity of children most marginalized by education. We all know this is not what the specific aim of my grant currently says, but trying to work on the wordings there. And then the last piece, which is really relevant for the policy conversation, is what are their key policy moderators? What features of preschool matter most? Money matters, but you talk to developmentalists and they'll tell you 15 other things that they think matter. So we're trying to create a systematic exploration of state characteristics, state preschool characteristics, state preschool spending, and child outcomes. And at the end of the grant, we're going to post this on ICPSR and make it publicly available. So it'll be a state policy data set that anybody can use to explore this. And we're building on the shoulders of many other population and poverty centers that have also collected these data. So our primary partnership here is with the Institute, National Institute of Early Education Research, who's at Rutgers. Yay, go Rutgers. Yeah. They have been funded by the Pew Charitable Trust for a really long time and collected data from state preschool administrators from 2002 to 2024. They just added the 2025 year, but that's what I'm showing you here today. So we know how much states invested and the number of children that they enrolled in their programs and a bunch of other characteristics about the preschool program. And a lot of these we're still cleaning right now, but states are really different and there's 50 different experiments. And so that's good and bad. And we're gonna look at both the per child in the state, right? Like across the entire population of your state, how much should you invest? Which is an interesting, perhaps less endogenous thing. We don't know, figuring this out. And then we'll look at per child enrolled as well. Everything's in $2024, and our regression is for a $1,000 unit increase, what corresponds with achievement data. We are pulling covariates from every single place on Earth, including IPMS, thank you, and the University of Kentucky Center for Poverty Research, which pulls everything together for a really long time. We have only 50 states, so we've tried to be really careful with which covariates we include in the regression. You just have very limited degrees of freedom. So a lot of things are bundled into this mean index of welfare program participation, but we've tried to distill it down to the key state economic, demographic, and political drivers of state policy, which for people familiar with the state policy innovation and adoption literature, that's kind of the core buckets that we are thinking about here. I should have said I'm from an interrupting culture. If anybody has questions, please ask, but I know there's complications with Zoom. Please feel free, especially for clarifying questions. I don't want to lose anybody. So, and I talk fast, so stop me at any time. The other piece that we're leveraging is Sean Reardon has done this terrific work. Okay, some of you are familiar with it, of harmonizing education administrative data across the entire country for many years. So what this provides us with is grade year and subgroup achievement aggregates for math and reading in 3rd to 8th grade. What we are trying to do is make it as comparable to the NAEP, which is the National Assessment of Educational Progress, which is the same assessment taken by kids across the country. That's really important because some states, their achievement tests might be the ceiling effects are up here and some are down here. So we want everybody on the same scale taking the same assessment to see, do these investments correspond with achievement differences? So everything's on this NAEP scale, and we're going to do these longitudinal comparisons. So what do we see? What's our variation, right? States have spent a lot of money. Each line is a state. This is the time period of our study. And this is the spending per 4-year-old in that state. So this is kind of messy. Let's look at some other ways to visualize. So the average state investment per 4-year-old has been pretty constant over the past 20 years. about $2,500 per child. Now, is that enough to fund a preschool spot? Not really. This is for the entire population. So I'll show you some other figures as well. But overall, we spend way, way, way less per 4-year-old than we do per 5-year-old. Kindergarten PPE is about $13,000 or $14,000 nationally, and a PPE per pupil expenditure for preschool is somewhere in the 6,000 range. So we are overall just like not investing at the same level, and we could talk about why, and I'll talk to you all day about that actually. So one of the things we've done in a companion paper that we're posting soon is to look at the profiles of states that have invested. And so we've got some states that have been increasing over time. They're really contributing a lot to our state fixed effect analysis when we're looking at within states over time. So these are the states that are really, that have experienced a lot of growth in spending. And they're really different states, right? This is highlighting just a couple examples: Colorado, Michigan, West Virginia, Vermont, California. California has really come online in the past few years because we've moved everything to the public schools for 4-year-old education. And I could talk about why that's a challenge. But so these are the high growth over time. These are the steady state places. So a real mix, right? Like, you know, there's the other piece I'll show you. There's not a real predictive story about what state is what kind of preschool state. So it doesn't, famously, it does not follow across political lines, because some of the first places with universal preschool were Georgia and Oklahoma. Florida, when I worked in the Florida early learning system, we had universal pre-K. That's what drove me back to graduate school. I love to make fun of Florida. Anybody want to join me on that? That's fine. But there's not a real political story here, and I'll show you some of the estimates of that. And then we've got the kind of low, steady and low folks. So over time, the investment level of per child enrolled, so for kids that take up the preschool option, how much do we spend? It's about $6,300. This is all in 2024 dollars. So it's pretty consistent and pretty low. So we've expanded enrollment, and that per child enrollment has remained constant, which is good. We don't want to expand access and reduce investment over time, because politically it's better to enroll more kids, right? But so this is an interesting finding, and we have a companion paper that's looking at this quality-quantity trade-off that'll be posted very soon. All right, so now on to our data. So the cohorts of children we observe at grade 4 in their achievement, these are the kind of the lines defining their preschool exposure years. So we do see some variation in our key right-hand side variable spending over this period. And that's about $800 average change in the policy exposure for the children that are observed in the outcome data set. So we do observe variation over time for the kids that are tested in the data set. And so this 800, we think, so we feel good about scaling that regression as a $1,000 increase. We're not expanding too far beyond the data. And again, this is all averages across the states, and we're doing this within state model. So now on to the kind of selection. We don't find any systematic drivers of what kind of preschool investment state you are, or just at a per regressing all of the covariates on how much money you spend per kid. So we tested all those covariates I showed you on the other slide. And then for these, you know, you might think, well, the high growth state, those are the ones that they're really progressive, or they're really rich. Not the case. So maybe something on the generosity, but not on overall state wealth. Here we're seeing the opposite on minimum wage for the kind of steady state group. And then no significant associations for these other two groups. In the regressions I'm going to show you, I'm not using these groups. This is just to kind of help you understand the policy landscape, and we have this in another paper. But here, if I put all of these on the right-hand side, predicting state spending per 4-year-old, it looks like if there's anything, it's something about the generosity of welfare. That seems to be The average, if states have a higher portion of their state participating in welfare programs, they look like they maybe spend another $47, right? So these are really modest, really small, but just to be transparent, we are not seeing a big descriptive story. Still, conservatively, I would interpret our regressions to be an upper bound. So if we think that there's positive bias into pre-K spending, you spend more if you're a more progressive state, or you care more about kids, or you care more about education, then what we find in our regressions is maybe a positively biased upper bound. All right, so I think everybody, gets the two-way fixed effect idea. So we're looking at 4th and 8th grade. That's what the G is here. The average achievement for a student in state S in grade G, and the treatment year is, they're a few years back. So if they're observed in grade 4, their treatment year is 5 years earlier for preschool. So that's what that indicates. So we are looking at the data set is a state by year data set. And then when we have subgroups, we have state by subgroup by year, because the outcome data is broken down by subgroups. You might say, well, why are you doing it? Why wouldn't you have individual level data? We tried to get individual level NAEP data, and IES is on life support, as we all know. So no discs are leaving IES. So we're doing it with the public access data for now, and maybe we'll try to look at it with the individual level outcome data. But I think we talked to a bunch of people. I think this is still a really reasonable and probably perfectly good approach. I don't know that it would be so different if we had individual level outcome data. The outcome is just, we did not have a hypothesis that these investments would be more important for math than they were for reading. Developmentalists, I mean, everybody tells stories. Economists make up the wildest stories. The post hoc explanations, you could fill the river, right? So we just said we're going to put it in an index, and we're keeping it with the NAEP tested grades. So we're going to look at this at grade 4 and 8. We are producing weighted and unweighted estimates. For a group of population researchers, you might throw your hummus at me or whatever to even suggest that we might do something unweighted. Why? Well, in the kind of political science state policy literature, people think about each state as its own experiment. And so we thought, okay, if you look at 50 state policy regimes, and you look at that over time, is the result, what do those results suggest? And we, a priori, were trying to predict this and decide what we liked as a team. For subgroup estimates, we have to use the weighted achievement because not every state has Black students, and et cetera. So again, you all, okay, don't hate me just for even suggesting this idea, but I'm going to show you weighted and unweighted estimates. Our alternative specifications, we have state trends in the outcome. The baseline covariates interacted with a linear time trend instead of including the time varying covariates for the reasons we all, the kind of challenges with two-way fixed effects. And then we are implementing this new fancy estimators that fix the negative weighting problem in two-way fixed effects when you have a continuous treatment. So there's all this literature about how to do the good diff and dips with a dichotomous treatment, but when you have a continuous one, it's different. We've run this and the results look exactly the same. There's still bugs in the package and we're all a slave to, the state of packages or whatever your run is. But so we're working on that, but it looks exactly the same. So that's been encouraging so far. All right, descriptive results and then main results, and I will do it. Okay, so what do we see? For our treated cohorts, with the data that we have, we see that pre-K enrollment for these cohorts grew by about 14 percentage points. For the 8th grade cohorts, the pre-K enrollment grew by 13 percentage points. This is just raw data, and then I'll show you the regression adjusted ones. This is where I want to talk to. There's another table I want to geek out with all of the people in this room and the home of IPMs on these estimates of preschool enrollment. So the NEAR gives us state aggregates of how many kids enrolled. It doesn't give us how many children who were economically disadvantaged enrolled, how many children who identify as Black enrolled. So we can't get enrollment at the subgroup level from our NEAR data. And so we've pulled CPS and ACS as well to get these subgroup first stages. There's some different trends in the different data sources. So the Common Core of data pulls from the entire public school universe. So we can see how many kids enrolled in public school pre-K. But most pre-K programs are in mom and pop's Sunshine Daycare, or in Head Start, or in any number of places. So it's a mixed delivery model in preschool. So this captures some stuff, but not everything. So we see that enrollment has increased over time nationally, and we're going to use these data to look at the enrollment impacts on from funding. So, all right, Jade. Well, you won't convince me that your methods have any face validity if I can't see that spending actually moved enrollment, right? Well, that's what I'm going to show you right now. The unweighted and the weighted. You can population research hate me for the left-hand side, but on the right-hand side, the weighted estimates, we can see that for a $1,000 increase in state funding for four-year-olds, that there's about a 13 or 14 percentage point increase in enrollment in preschool. So corresponds really closely to just the raw data. That is always nice to see. And for 8th grade cohorts, again, these are two kind of separate data sets, so I'm going to show them to you in this kind of panel, but really similar, about a 14 percentage point increase for every $1,000 investment. Now, what happens when we want to look at subgroups, right? Things get a little different. So I'm going to show you the overall first stage from different sources, and it corresponds with that line graph. We see, 12 or 13 right here for the NEAR estimates. When we look at this $1,000 increase on enrollment in the CCD data set, it suggests a 7 percentage point increase in public school pre-K. And then when we look at ACS and CPS, things are a little different. Now, the items are also different. Parents don't know what kind of program they're enrolled in. You can't, like, as a parent, you're like, here, take my kid, I have to go to work, right? You don't know, like, oh, you're contracted with Head Start and you get this kind of funding. No parent knows that. So we think the items in the ACS and CPS just suggest, like, are you a parent of a 4-year-old and are they enrolled in something, is a little bit of a different measure. But so we're showing everything for transparency and then to get feedback as well. Now, the real reason that we're doing this across the different data sources is to get these subgroup specific first stage effects. And what we find is fairly consistent across the subgroups available. But again, because those overall enrollment rates in ACS and CPS are smaller, it's harder to get at subgroup specific effects as well. But so we see at least a fairly consistent trend that spending does increase enrollment. There's not really any meaningful differences across the subgroups when we observe them, but the magnitudes are different across the data sources. So I would love feedback on if you know exactly why, and then I will cite you and this wonderful institution in our paper. But the NEAR is also aware of this issue and have been wondering about it for years, why the state admin data is different from census data. All right, finally, I told you I would show you my own results. Here we are. So two-way fixed effect models, all the different specifications by 4th and 8th grade, and then by subgroup. So unweighted is a bunch of null. And you say, well, I hated that already, Jade, so that's fine. The weighted estimates, what we see is about a 0.16 standard deviation impact. So for every $1,000 increase in the investments in preschool for 4-year-olds in your state, that corresponds with a small but robust positive effect on aggregated reading and math scores. It does look like this is driven mostly by impacts on math. Okay. In 8th grade, it's a bunch of null no matter what we do. So impacts at 4th, does it fade by 8th grade? Is this exactly fade out? We don't have post-treatment, so hard to describe what this phenomenon means, but we're seeing some signal at 4th grade. if you've read anything I've ever published, it's all null. So I was like kind of amazed to find something that's not null. And so when we kick the tires on it, it remains, it seems fairly robust. So even here it falls to the 0.1 significance level, but it doesn't move. And then that DeChase, Martin, and Hatafai estimator is 0.14 and significant. So no matter what we are throwing at it, it remains significant, but nothing ever happens with the 8th grade scores. For subgroups, we do see, consistent with other literature in preschool and in early childhood intervention, more substantial impacts on Hispanic children. That's the way it's identified in these data, Latino children, and children who are economically disadvantaged. A lot of these programs are targeted towards economically disadvantaged families, so perhaps this isn't surprising, but we are seeing that these policies can compensate for structural inequalities. When we look at this at an achievement gap as the measure, which is included in CETA and as the preferred measure by those data owners, we see the same results. Still nothing in 8th grade. So, okay, what does this mean and what else are we doing? We see that this first stage effect, so if you invest money in preschool, people enroll. That's great. And we've seen that in other studies as well, and other work that our team has done in North Carolina, the kind of the first R01 we had looking at these sorts of issues. A weighted impact gives us this 0.01 standard deviation achievement gains in 4th grade. And this is pretty robust, we think, across model specifications. And I'm pleased to see that. Usually things fall apart when you start to kick the tires, but so we feel pretty good about this being an upper bound, right? So if this is positively biased, what does that mean? I don't know. And then these are in line with a recent meta-analysis done by Bo Jackson, and I don't know how to pronounce his last name, that look at similarly sized investments in K-12. 4 years of $1,000 increase corresponded with a 0.03 impact. So here we see a 1 year $1,000 increase corresponded with a 0.016. So we think in line, small, but in line with other meta-analytic estimates of quasi-experimental data. Nothing on 8th grade, and it looks like it is a compensatory effect on for children that are furthest from opportunity or are structurally disadvantaged. So to wrap up, I'll tell you where we're going with the project. We are coding up these program moderators now. This may be less of interest to folks that aren't in this zone, but people have a lot of feelings about what features matter most. It looks like maybe some of the positive impacts are driven by programs that are universal, but we're still exploring this because those are obviously correlated with expenditures. So trying to figure this out descriptively or from an impact perspective and incorporating some other moderators. We're putting these estimators in I spoke about. We'll look at grade proficiency as a binary outcome. Sean Reardon wants us to do this thing to deal with measurement error, but nobody else in the world cares about it. So I don't know. It's random effects model is just a different thing. So I don't know what we'll do there. And then what are we doing more broadly across the project? As I said, we have this descriptive paper that's looking just what has happened. How has this policy expanded over 20 years? And looking at the quality-quantity trade-off. We're trying to look at who enrolls, and that's where that first stage effect, I'm really curious to hear everybody's thoughts. Who enrolls? Is it high-income parents, low-income parents? Who serves low-income families best? Which types of programs? My postdoc, Unho Cha, has a paper looking at maternal employment that she finds a very small, but robust positive impact on maternal employment. This is not an employment policy at all. This is designed to do the miracle of the Heckman investment. But it's pretty mechanical, right? Like parents are trying to work, and if you help subsidize that cost, we see a little bit there. We are getting into the FSRDC to look at the NHI, the National Health Interview Survey, to look at impacts on child health, either health behaviors, direct health impacts. So you learn to wash your hands. You have to get vaccinated before you go to preschool. You have exposed, if you're a parent of a young one, you get sick a lot, like you train the microbiome, all of these different mechanisms we could think about. Does preschool affect child health in the short, medium, and long run? So we think that's a big value added because it's not done in the literature. And my excellent graduate student, Nick Ainsworth, is leading a paper on special education, preliminarily finding some increase as you spend more, kids get identified for special ed, but that it can lead to some positive achievement outcomes in the long run. So I will leave it there, and I'm ready for discussion and feedback. Thanks so much. Okay. All right. Oh, no, I don't have. Okay. You guys are so polite.
We're well trained.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking about your extension to use the National Health Interview Survey. And it seems like one of the outcomes that is less well measured in some of the previous literature is emotional or behavioral outcomes.
Yeah.
And the National Health Interview Survey is going to give you some validated scales there, especially on I think it's like child strengths and difficulties.
Okay.
And then they'll also have the I'm blanking on the name. They have some validated measures of disability as well that are for that seem like they would tap into that outcome that hasn't been particularly well measured.
Exactly. And mental health is another one that we wanted to look at in the NHIS, is looking at maternal mental health and other maternal outcomes. For obvious reasons, this is not designed as a family support policy. It's designed to help kids. We like helping kids. We don't love helping families. I don't have to explain that to you all, at least in the US. But so we want to try to look at these exactly in the NHIS.
And they also have ACEs, which I think would be good.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jenkins, for sharing your work with us. My thoughts are around the disappearing effects or the fade off effects. And I'm curious if we know anything from the education literature about things that are persistent and how this might be different. I guess like the only thing I can think of is like I was a Mayer scholar and then I transitioned into grad school and like all that scaffolding was all of a sudden gone. And it was very hard, right? Because it had all this support. And so I'm just curious if we might compare, or we might try to like theorize what's happening at the transition out. That might be kind of explaining maybe even the downward trend.
Yes. So, okay, great opportunity to talk about the first grant we had, which was all about the hypothesis of sustaining environments. Under what conditions do the effects of early learning interventions fade or sustain? And we tested the socks out of that one, and there is just nothing there. So if you look at, okay, and I've done this in the Head Start Impact Study as well, meta-analytic work on this, it's a compelling hypothesis that it was like, oh, this should be true. If you go to you get this preschool intervention and then you go to a school with really well-trained teachers or is high achieving or has low teacher turnover, is that when you go into a better environment, do you gain from that? And there's some evidence that everybody gains, but you don't differentially gain if you went to preschool. So there's some what people call convergence when they like to make it sound nice, is just like, well, then everybody that didn't have that opportunity catches up. I think what we found is that if you get this early intervention from public preschool, if you go to a low achieving school, if you're in a bad environment, it does buffer the bad environment a little. So we've seen more evidence of preschool as this compensatory effect, both the way it's conceived in policy, like you are in poverty, we will compensate for that by providing you with education. In the post-treatment, it's the same. Like you got this benefit, now you're in a difficult situation, and the strengths you gain from there help to mitigate what's happening, but it doesn't differentially sustain it. So it's something we've been looking at for a long time. People have these other ideas about the foot in the door hypothesis. So you, at this critical juncture in development over the course in the life course, when you're applying to college or applying to grad school and you get this opportunity, is that the right moment? But you can't randomly assigning those things and testing those theories in a causal way is so demanding. So I think it's an area for exploration, but we have seen just nothing on it. But intuitively, right? Like I think you'd think of that. Yeah.
Thank you very much. I think maybe it will be interesting to look as secondary outcome of female labor. Like, so we're investing in preschool. Usually mothers, like in perhaps more conservative or traditional societies, stay at home to take care of the kids until they can attend primary school. Maybe this can like encourage mothers to
Yeah, that's what this is.
Oh, okay.
This paper I was talking about, that's exactly what we're looking at.
Okay, and yes, and as someone has said that the NHIS has like SDQ scores, and they have but every 2 or 3 years, so that you could use, but they just changed the survey. So yes, in 2019 it was redesigned. So maybe
Okay.
yes, just to be careful with that.
Thank you.
And what was the reason in your specification of using 5-year lag for investment? So if you or
That's when you would have been as a child eligible for preschool in that year. So preschool is an age eligibility criteria. So we want to capture the spending that you were exposed to when you were 4 years old.
Oh, okay, makes sense. Thanks.
It tested at fourth grade. Yes.
Oh, so grade 4 is your okay. So you see the outline in grade 4, but you were eligible. Oh, okay. I understand. Thank you.
Great talk. Thank you. My question is, I've been thinking a lot about period effects that happen over this time period. And I was thinking about, the data starts in early 2000s, then you have the Great Recession like coming up, and then you have the advent of the smartphone and social media and all of that, the digital distraction, people at work. So I'm just thinking about, have you thought about how all of those things might be confounding anything in terms of other things that changed over the same period?
I mean, and so it's just so tough in these data. So we're really relying on those time fixed effects to capture like recession shocks, right? And so we really rely on that. We rely on the time varying economic conditions, but because of how those things, that's really where the state trends, the interactive baseline trends, and you see those descriptive dips in enrollment, like mostly at the recession, just a teeny amount, but states got more money during the recession. It's really during COVID. So, but because they got these ARA funds so for our phenomena, it wasn't as difficult, but with COVID, we're thinking about it a lot. Like, how many post-COVID test cohorts do we want? So we're just relying on those, like any staggered rollout study is relying on those state fixed effects. But I mean, I would love to, if we could kick the tires, or if there's some good robustness checks we could do there. I would love. Yeah, please tell me.
Yeah, Jade, this is a great talk. I really love the background on the different pre-K studies and the literature, and this is an incredibly important area for policy investment. And so, the Abecedarian and the other study that that showed that the RCTs that had such strong evidence with and the 40-year follow-up study with Heckman have been really strong evidence, as you said. But one critique is that they were so strong, they were so different than the Head Start studies, and Head Start is not nearly as comparable in terms of what it offers. So I'm thinking about, and my question is, in thinking about the variability across the states and what the states offer in terms of the quality of care. I know you're using the amount of money that they're spending.
Yeah.
But do you know anything about, other aspects about quality? And do you know about what they're spending for the 0 to 3 period? The 0 to 3 period and anything that they're offering, anything the state is offering. And I know that some states like Vermont were offering, things at the time of birth. And that period, with the brain development is so important. So was there anything else that could be, I don't know, confounding?
Yes.
So during that period.
I've been thinking about all of these things a lot. So the quality stuff is really these moderators one of the things is these moderators. One of the checks like last week, is looking at, is it like high spenders or low spenders? Is there above or below median? Once you start splicing and dicing a two-way fixed effect with 50 states, things get really bizarre because you have to check the descriptives of all of those subgroups, right? So it gets a little crazy. It doesn't look like it's as much of a spending story. It may be this universal piece, which is really like, we see preschool as this infrastructure we're offering to everybody, and it's not targeted towards low-income families. We don't segregate kids. So that's where I think we want to really hammer down. Like, people have been arguing about universal and targeted for years, and it's these political decisions, even though we know the impact is strongest for kids who need it the most, but what does it mean for the quality of a scaled up program? So I think that's where we're heading, but it's harder to do it with this framework. And so even if descriptively we can get at it, but I've been thinking a lot about the comparison of Perry and Abecedarian to now, because Perry, the equivalent, what they spent in the Perry and Abecedarian programs are about $27,000 in 2024 converted, $27,000 per kid per year. Very different from a $6,000. And what did that money go towards? Even if we compare, Head Start PPE is probably closer to like a 13 for 4-year-olds. So it's probably the most comparable. But what's the biggest input difference? I was just writing about this for a paper, is the ratios. So the ratios, we know preschool and childcare is expensive because you need adult-child interactions. Most scaled up preschool programs are 1 teacher to 10 or 12 kids. Abecedarian and Perry was 1 to 5 or 1 to 6. And so I think that's the biggest part, but states aren't going to fund that. And then we're partnering with the Prenatal to 3 Center to try to bring in some of the 0 to 3 stuff, but that panel doesn't exist all the way back. So if you want to do some of this within state stuff, it's hard to pull it. But that's where we're trying to pull in to test some of these as confounds. I know. And that's what I'm doing I know, but that's based on these crappy home visit studies that don't scale up anyway, and nobody wants people coming in their home and telling them what to do with their kids. Yeah,
they're crappy, but they're like.
Yeah, so exactly. And so I'm doing all the policy work I'm doing in California right now is really about 0 to 3 and how you do a scale up of 0 to 3 with the state speaker's office. But like, do they want to do it? There's no way around it. It costs money. Like, you can't put AI. Don't talk to me about AI, right? Like, so you need humans, and so humans are expensive. And childcare teachers aren't paid. They're paid. They make more money. They leave for Costco. That's our biggest problem now. They're going to Chick-fil-A and Costco. They don't want to stay. Okay, sorry, I could talk about this all day, but please don't.
No, I echo Teresa. This is fantastic, and just the incredible framing of this. Like, if I were a funder, I would fund this right now, just because it's so.
All right, put it in my pocket. Yeah.
So I would love to. So this is IPMS. I would love to hear some speculation about the differential trends between CPS and the admin data. Because if it really is parents not knowing what program their kids participate in, why would they get closer together over time? Like, why now are they matching so well, but 20 years ago they weren't? Is it possible that admin data is wrong?
I don't know, because this is where, like, it's a great question, but like, the NEAR is asking states, hey, how much did you spend and who enrolled? Like, and they're only spending money on kids they know are enrolled. So in some ways, it's like they've been collecting these data and they're consistent over time. And I can go back to the trends graph. And this doesn't have the NEAR data here. But I don't know. I was hoping you could tell me the speculation we've made is that, or here's the other interpretation we have of these data, and this is where we're probing, is that what we see on the NEAR data versus these data is that this could be consistent with the idea of, this is the public preschool enrollment. These are public preschool enrollment. If we look at, I think the item is like, is your child in any childcare? It's a little higher. So what we think this could be a consistent story with is that parents have moved from, there's not increasing levels of preschool enrollment, but moving from privately funded to publicly funded. And so one of the things we're pulling, we can't do it at the state level. We're pulling the consumer expenditure survey, and we're going to see if high, medium, and low income families have been spending, as preschool enrollment has gone up, are they spending less of their personal money on childcare and education? So this is enrollment in public versus all, and I should have put the all on here. That's our speculation, but I don't know. That's what I'm hoping you guys can help me with. And do we have time for one or we're done?
No,
Okay.
I think we're
Done.
going to
Yeah.
wrap up, but those are great questions. And thank you so much.
Thank you guys. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
And please, my email, you could find it. If you have ideas, I'll pull this up and I'll just leave it as you're exiting out. But thank you all so much. Okay. Oh, I have a lot of clicking.